The fall wasn't loud. It was the kind of silence that follows when metal gives up and gravity takes control. The Black Hawk rolled once before the lights went out, rotors screaming, desert air torn open, then nothing but the sound of her breath in the dark. Captain Rachel Keene hit ground face first in dust and fuel, ribs cracked, teeth full of grit. She didn't pray. She counted. Heartbeats. Seconds. Survivors. The fire lit the sand like a flare for no one. She stayed still until the noise faded, then moved because stillness meant death. Later, Command called it an incident. She called it instruction. So watch close. Subscribe. Share where you're watching from. Because this wasn't about falling. It was about learning how long you can stay calm before you hit. 0500 hours. The first light of day slips through the mist at Camp Fallon, thin and deliberate, the kind that doesn't warm, only reveals. Concrete glistens beneath sodium lamps still burning from the night watch. Engines idle in the distance, steady and rhythmic, their sound softened by the fog. The air carries the faint metallic bite of hydraulic oil and the clean chill of desert dawn. Captain Avery Dalton steps from the transport truck and pauses at the edge of the tarmac. The world around her moves with mechanical precision. Loading crews crossing lines of paint, security personnel shifting at checkpoints, the echo of boots on wet pavement. It's all familiar, unchanged. And yet, something in her stillness makes the routine feel foreign. Her uniform is pressed but worn. The fabric moves differently on her, more rigid where it once yielded. A single bar of rank gleams at her collar, sharp against the muted field gray. She adjusts it once, an unnecessary correction, before crossing toward the operations hangar. Inside, the hum deepens. Fluorescent lights flicker over rows of desks, maps pinned with color-coded pins and red lines of grease pencil. A wall clock ticks louder than the voices. Personnel pass in and out, acknowledging her with curt nods, eyes flicking just long enough to remember what they've heard. The returning officer, the one from the classified run. The air inside is sterile, recycled, odorless, but memory carries its own scent. Salt water, cordite, iron. She walks past the mission boards without a glance. Every line of her posture says control, yet the edges of her gaze betray fatigue measured not in hours, but in ghosts. At the front, a colonel confers quietly with two lieutenants. Dalton halts at regulation distance. No words, no greetings, only an exchange of nods, acknowledgement layered with unspoken understanding. Chain of command, intact, procedure, followed, emotion, locked. A new roster waits on the table, her assignment reconditioning leadership for deep environment endurance units, controlled environments, psychological pressure, oxygen discipline, a safe distance from the front. She signs her name with mechanical precision, the pen steady, though her pulse is not. The morning unfolds in patterns. A medical check, a uniform inspection, a silent meal in the officer's mess. Every motion rehearsed, each step another layer sealing over memory. But even order has its cracks. In the hallway outside logistics, the sound comes, light, careless, unfiltered. A laugh, it's brief, echoing from an open doorway, but it halts her. The kind of laugh that once filled the dark between missions, when fear disguised itself as humor. She turns her head slightly, just enough to locate the sound, but not enough to betray recognition. It isn't him. Can't be. That voice was silenced 3 months ago beneath black water and fire. Yet, the echo lingers like a reflection beneath the surface. For a second, the air thickens. The steady hum of base operations fades beneath memory, the crush of water, the silence after a comms blackout, the realization of who didn't surface. She inhales slowly through her nose, counting 1, 2, 3. The same breathing cadence used in decompression drills, the method that once saved her life. Exhale, control returns, the world resets. Outside, the sun lifts higher, washing color back into the base, tan uniforms, dull metal, red training flags snapping in the wind. She steps onto the observation deck overlooking the training pool where recruits assemble for morning drills. Their movements are sharp, uncertain, the rhythm of those who have not yet learned stillness. Dalton watches without expression. The stopwatch in her hand, standard issue, scratched at the edge, ticks softly in her palm. She presses the reset button, the second hand pausing mid-motion before starting anew. Another beginning, another test of endurance. Below, a whistle pierces the morning. The recruits dive on command, their synchronized motion cutting through the surface like a promise. The sound of water replaces the echo in her mind. Routine reclaims her. She turns away from the railing, the stopwatch silent now in her hand. Control reestablished. Breath even. Duty resumed. Transition to Act 2. The pressure builds tension. As the camera lingers on the recruits resurfacing, Avery's reflection fades into the glass, the face of composure concealing the weight of survival. The rising tempo of training drills carries the story forward, signaling that pressure, both internal and external, is about to return. 0600 hours. Light slices through the fog hanging low over the training compound, fractured into pale beams by the pool's rising steam. Chlorine and desert dust mingle in the air, sharp against the lungs. The rhythmic slap of water against concrete sets the cadence of the morning, methodical, precise, without emotion. Captain Avery Dalton stands at the pool's edge, clipboard in hand, stopwatch clipped to her wrist. Her reflection wavers across the surface. Uniform pressed, posture exact, eyes hidden behind the black tint of issued goggles. Around her, recruits tread water in formation, their breaths measured to command cadence, breaking the silence in even bursts. She calls no orders aloud. Everything operates by timing now. Discipline through repetition, trust through endurance. Each man and woman knows the rhythm: 30 seconds submerged, 15 seconds up, 5 to reposition. The pattern is unyielding. The surface of the pool trembles as bodies descend and resurface in disciplined sequence. The choreography of control. At the far end of the pool, Corporal Ryan Cates breaks formation by fractions. His resurfacing comes a second late, his breath louder than the rest. The movement seems small, nearly invisible, but Dalton notes it. She marks his name with a line drawn so straight it looks like a blade. Cates moves with a kind of deliberate arrogance, efficient, capable, but too aware of being watched. He adjusts his mask slower than required, glances up at her between drills. His body language walks the thin line between confidence and challenge. The unspoken tension builds, not in words, but in the space between movements. Dalton shifts her stance slightly, the metal whistle resting idle in her hand. Around her, the other instructors mirror professionalism, unreadable, procedural, yet beneath the precision, something hums the pulse of defiance, the vibration that precedes fracture. The next evolution begins. Controlled underwater navigation. Recruits descend, weighted and blindfolded, tracing the perimeter by touch. Each uses the rope line to orient in darkness, guided only by breath count and tactile awareness. Dalton monitors their intervals with unbroken focus. The stopwatch ticks softly against her wrist, its rhythm perfectly aligned with her pulse. Midway through the circuit, turbulence disturbs the water's surface. Cates again. He moves off path, cutting the line short, turning early to surface. The motion earns no whistle, no reprimand, only another silent note. She records the deviation, early by 5 seconds. When the session ends, recruits line the deck for vitals. Dalton walks the perimeter, recording pulse and oxygen saturation. Her presence radiates composure, steady movements, unbroken calm. Cates stands last in line, water dripping from his shaved head, breath still elevated. When she reaches him, the space between them feels charged. His chest rises too fast. The look he gives her is unspoken challenge, a quiet assertion that he's untested, that she's restrained. Dalton meets his stare for the briefest moment before shifting her attention to her log. The pulse reading blinks on her wrist monitor, 118 beats per minute. She writes it down cleanly, ink barely visible against the glare of the sun. By 0800 hours, the drills shift to endurance lanes. The recruits pair off for timed submersions, testing breath control under stress. Dalton moves through each group, recording data, adjusting form, offering no verbal correction. Every action unfolds within the code of professionalism, detached, deliberate. Yet tension grows, quiet and invisible, pressing at the edges of order. When the last circuit ends, Kate steps forward before she can dismiss formation. He dives without instruction. The ripples cut through the reflection of light like a blade across glass. She watches the stopwatch. 15 seconds. 20. 30. His body remains submerged. At 50 seconds, the water is still. Recruits glance toward her, uncertain. At 75, tiny bubbles trail upward, the tell of strain. She does not move. At 90 seconds, the first tremor hits, a shift of pressure, a flicker of muscle. She steps forward once, calm. At 100 seconds, he surfaces, lungs emptying in a violent rush. Water spills down his face, eyes wide with adrenaline. He looks toward her, chest heaving, a silent question disguised as pride. Dalton stops the watch at 103 seconds. The number holds between them, heavy as judgment. She neither acknowledges nor commends. Instead, she marks it precisely beside his name. Endurance test, unsanctioned. Her pen lingers for a moment before adding another word, observed. The next drill begins as if nothing has occurred. The rhythm restores itself. Movement, breath, silence. Yet beneath the surface, a line has been drawn. What began as discipline now hums with something else. Anticipation, the kind that precedes confrontation. By noon, the deck is dry, and the air hums with the sound of equipment being stowed. Dalton sits at a metal table beneath the shade structure, the logbook open before her. Each entry is meticulous times, vitals, notes. The sun bleaches the ink to gray. She reviews the data without expression, then pauses on one line. Kate's, Ryan. Her handwriting is exact, but the small smudge of water near the name distorts the word. She touches it once, then draws a single line beneath the page's final entry. In the column labeled Comments, she writes one word, Control. The ink dries slow in the heat. She closes the logbook and places it atop the metal table. The hum of distant machinery fades to silence, replaced by the faint echo of water draining from the filtration system. The camera lingers on her reflection in the stainless steel surface, steady, precise, unreadable. Then, a faint shimmer of rippled light moves across her face, like sunlight refracted through water. Transition to Act 3, the immersion climax. As the frame tightens, the sound of breath through a regulator rises beneath the ambient quiet, a premonition of the confrontation to come. The calm before the descent. 0450 hours. The world is still half asleep when the pool lights flicker on. Long, white arcs that cast the water in a sterile blue. Steam rises off the surface in slow curls, blurring the edges of the world. Beyond the glass of the observation bay, monitors glow faint green, recording heart rates, oxygen levels, pressure data. The hum of the filtration system is steady, mechanical, the only sound breaking the quiet. Captain Avery Dalton stands barefoot on the deck, wetsuit zipped to the throat. Her posture is straight, deliberate. Every motion she makes is exact, born of habit rather than thought. The stopwatch rests against her wrist again, its face catching the light like a cold coin. This morning is an evaluation, official, procedural, endurance verification for advanced recruits. Yet everyone on deck knows it's more than that. The air holds that still tension that precedes weather. The instructors stand silent, their clipboards ready, but their eyes track one man in particular, Corporal Ryan Cates, already in the water, mask half on, muscles rigid with impatience. Dalton kneels to check the depth sensors. Her movements calm, unhurried. Behind her, Cates lowers himself into the pool completely, exhaling a sharp burst through his nose before submerging to his station line. The surface ripples once, then smooths again. His reflection merges with hers, authority and defiance, momentarily indistinguishable. She signals the start. Cates and 2 other recruits descend first, guided by the overhead grid of blue light. Dalton follows, her movement clean, precise. Water folds around her shoulders, cool and heavy. The sound of the surface fades instantly, replaced by pressure and pulse. Down here, command and challenge are stripped of voice. Breath is the only truth that matters. At 10 feet below, they level out. Each Marine anchors to their line, one hand steady on the rope. The test is simple. Remain composed, heart steady, air conserved, no movement unless signaled. The monitors above register vitals, translating breath into numbers. For Dalton, the number must remain below 60 beats per minute, the mark of control. Cates hovers nearby, his eyes narrow behind the mask. The first minute passes. Bubbles rise in lazy spirals from his regulator, rhythm steady but louder than the rest. Dalton watches without watching, awareness in every shift of the water. 2 minutes. Cates's breath begins to quicken. Not failure yet, just eagerness, the impatience of strength. He glances sideways at her through the blue distortion. She remains still, her hands folded over her chest, eyes fixed on the grid line above. No challenge acknowledged, no contest accepted. The pressure begins to build. Instructors above note the change in vitals. Dalton's readings remain steady, respiration smooth, oxygen levels within threshold. Cates fluctuates slightly, a rise of pulse, a dip of saturation. Then he moves, subtle at first, a shift of body angle, a push closer to her line. Water displaces in small, deliberate waves. She senses him before she sees him. The world underwater is a conversation of movement, and his is loud. He drifts closer, then closer still, invading the space between professional and personal. His hand brushes her tether line, as though to test if she'll react. The contact is small, but loaded. The instructors above hesitate, unsure if it's an accident. But Dalton knows the intent provocation disguised as training. She doesn't respond, doesn't retreat. Instead, she exhales, one long, controlled breath. The release forms a cloud of silver bubbles that rise past her face, slow and unhurried, the kind of control that exposes chaos. Kate sees it and pushes further, swimming into her lane. His motion kicks up turbulence that distorts visibility. The water hums with the vibration of proximity. Her vitals hold steady. His spike, 130 beats per minute. The sensors flash amber. Then, the shift. He reaches for her line again, an unsanctioned move. His hand closes over the tether near her chest harness. A gesture of dominance, of challenge. The moment stretches. Dalton's hand rises, not to strike but to stabilize. She places her palm flat against his forearm. The motion is calm, decisive. Then, nothing. No resistance, no retreat. She simply holds. The stillness spreads outward like shockwave inversion, not power through force, but command through calm. The seconds elongate. Pressure presses in. Her lungs tighten. She feels the carbon dioxide spike, the body's instinct to breathe clawing at restraint. She lowers her heart rate deliberately, trained reflex, counting in her mind 4 beats, then 3, then 2. The sensation shifts from pain to stillness. Cates thrashes faintly, confused by her lack of reaction. The more he resists, the more turbulent his breathing becomes. Bubbles stream upward in erratic bursts. Dalton stays motionless, a silhouette of control in the blue distortion. Her pulse monitor steadies at 58 beats per minute. Kate's surges to 150. The system above alarms softly, muted beeps absorbed by the water's weight. When his body jerks upward, breaking discipline, she releases him. No aggression, only gravity letting go. His ascent is messy, panicked. She waits a second longer, then pushes upward with smooth efficiency, following but never chasing. The surface splits. Kate's explodes into air, gasping, coughing, his body half over the deck edge. Dalton surfaces behind him, silent. Her breathing is controlled, each exhale shallow and measured. The water streams off her mask, droplets catching morning light like fragments of glass. No one speaks. The instructor steps forward, but Dalton lifts a single hand, a signal to stand down. This is not an emergency. This is instruction. She removes her mask slowly. Her face is expressionless, unreadable except for the faint tremor of pulse at her neck. Kate sits slumped, hands on the deck, chest heaving. The difference between them is not strength, it's stillness. Dalton climbs out of the pool, movements mechanical. She takes the towel offered by a nearby recruit and wipes the condensation from her wrist monitor. The screen reads steady, oxygen saturation optimal, pulse returning to baseline. She presses the data log, saving the entry. On the observation console, two graphs display side by side, hers a steady line, his jagged and spiked. The instructor overseeing records the time. Dalton's note appears beneath it. Completion verified. For a long moment, no one moves. The sound of water dripping from the gutter edges echoes through the space. Then, Dalton exhales once, long and steady, the final act of release. The sound breaks the silence like punctuation. Cates lowers his head. The surface stills again. Dalton turns toward the exit, the early sunlight beginning to bleed across the deck. Behind her, the pool ripples settle into calm, a mirror reflecting control reclaimed. Her shadow passes over the glass where the data monitors glow, her pulse still visible as a clean, unwavering line. Transition to Act 4, the reckoning consequence. As she walks out into the light, the faint sound of a report printer begins, the official record of what just occurred. The page feeds slowly from the machine, marked with 2 names, 2 outcomes, and one truth. Endurance isn't about holding breath, it's about mastering silence. 0900 hours. The command review room hums with the quiet pulse of electricity, projectors idle, fans cycling filtered air. The walls are painted dull gray, the kind that absorbs sound and feeling alike. At the center of the room, a single screen glows with paused footage, 2 figures suspended underwater, frozen mid-motion, one still as stone, the other, arms flailing in the haze of rising bubbles. Captain Avery Dalton sits alone at the end of the long metal table. Her uniform is immaculate, every crease deliberate, boots aligned with the seam of the floor tile. The scent of chlorine lingers faintly, a ghost from the pool carried in by her towel hours earlier. Across from her, 3 officers review reports under dim light. Their voices are low, indistinct. Paper shuffles. A pen taps once, then stops. The projector's low whine fills the silence like a held breath. The footage begins. The image trembles slightly, camera distortion through water pressure. The timestamp flickers, 0510 hours. The pool's sterile blue fills the screen. Figures descend in formation. The perspective cuts to body-mounted sensors, heartbeat, oxygen, motion, data overlays in faint green numerals. Dalton's vitals appear on the lower right, steady pulse, oxygen level nominal, respiration cadence flawless. Kate's numbers pulse beside them, rising heart rate, irregular respiration, escalating stress markers. The data doesn't accuse, it simply records. The footage continues. The board watches in silence as the moment plays, his encroachment, her stillness, the hand on the tether, The disruption. The release. No sound, only motion, rendered weightless by water. When the clip ends, the screen fades to black. The projector hums louder, filling the absence. The colonel presiding at the table shifts the stack of reports to the center. One of the lieutenants makes a note, lips pressed thin. Kate sits 2 seats down from Dalton, posture rigid, eyes fixed on the table. The reflection of the blank screen dances across his jaw, making him look younger than his record suggests. The colonel's gaze lifts toward her. No words are needed. Her composure, her silence, becomes its own testimony. Every breath she's taken since the incident is accounted for, measured, controlled, beyond reproach. Procedure dictates that the board determine whether actions taken compromise training integrity. The phrasing is clinical, almost antiseptic, but underneath, it's a judgment of leadership, of trust. They play the data logs next. The sound of heartbeats amplified through the speakers, steady on one channel, chaotic on the other, a rhythm of order and collapse. The colonel's expression doesn't change, but the silence that follows feels different now. Not of uncertainty, but of realization. The truth has already been spoken through pulse and pressure. Cates shifts in his chair. The paper in front of him is blank, except for his name typed across the top. Sweat forms at his temple. His breathing is uneven, audible even in the still air. Across from him, Dalton doesn't move. Her gaze is steady, fixed somewhere beyond the wall, on memory, on control, on distance. The colonel closes the report with quiet precision. The sound of paper sliding back into its folder marks the turning point. The finding is procedural, but its weight is personal. Dalton maintained regulation at every interval. Her readings stayed within operational parameters. Her restraint prevented escalation. Kate's violation of conduct, unsanctioned engagement, physical contact during evaluation, disregard for supervision, is formally noted. No voices rise. No one celebrates. There is no satisfaction in vindication here. Only order restored. The colonel's nod is small, deliberate. Authority returns to its rightful place, not through rank, but through discipline. Dalton signs the acknowledgement line without hesitation. Her handwriting is clean, efficient. She caps the pen and sets it parallel to the edge of the table. Then she stands, the chair sliding back with a muted scrape. Cates remains seated, his reflection fractured in the surface of the metal tabletop. The board members do not look up. The sound of her boots against tile breaks the silence as she crosses the room. Each step echoes once, then fades, leaving stillness behind. At the doorway, she pauses, not to turn, but to steady her breath. The stopwatch hangs from her wrist again, its face glinting in the fluorescent light. For a brief moment, she looks down at it, thumb brushing over the reset button. The second hand freezes, then begins again. Outside, morning light spills across the walkway, sharp and colorless. She steps into it without hesitation. The sound of the door closing behind her seals the moment, clean and final. The air beyond the building smells of dust and heat, alive with the faint hum of the bass coming awake. Somewhere, recruits call cadence in the distance, the next generation rehearsing the rhythm she's mastered. She walks toward the sound, each step measured, precise. There is no pride in her gait, no relief, only control, that quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself anymore. Behind her, the report printer clicks once, feeding the final page into its tray. The ink is still drying on the last line of the record outcome regulation maintained. 0600 hours. Camp Fallon breathes again beneath a pale horizon. The air is cool, still damp with night, carrying the faint scent of concrete, salt, and desert wind. Sunlight creeps slowly over the rooftops, sliding across antennas and bleached training flags until it reaches the pool deck, the same place where pressure once ruled. But today, The light moves differently. It lingers. It forgives. Captain Avery Dalton stands at the edge of the water. Her reflection drifts beside her boots, fractured by gentle ripples. The stopwatch rests in her palm, silent, unmoving. Around her, a new group of recruits lines the deck in formation, wetsuits zipped, goggles in hand, waiting for instruction. They do not fidget or whisper. Their silence is a kind of respect. The hum of the filtration system returns. Softer now, almost musical. Steam curls upward in thin, silver ribbons. Dalton studies the recruits, their posture uncertain, their breathing uneven. She knows that sound. She once lived inside it. Fear, disguised as readiness. She draws a slow breath of her own, steady and deep, feeling the air fill every corner of her chest before releasing it, measured and even. Her demonstration is quiet, but precise. No command word follows. Instead, the recruits mirror her movement instinctively, each one exhaling in rhythm with her. The deck fills with the sound of synchronized breathing, soft, controlled, steady, the kind of rhythm that builds trust before endurance. Dalton steps forward. The sunlight catches her sleeve, warming the fabric that once felt cold against her skin. She kneels at the water's edge and places a hand flat on the surface. The temperature is sharp, familiar. The reflection shivers beneath her touch but doesn't break. Control without effort. For a moment, her mind drifts, not backward, but inward. She remembers the sound of the heartbeat monitor, the weight of silence under pressure, the look of chaos restrained by calm. What once felt like punishment now feels like truth. Survival wasn't about defiance. It was about knowing when not to fight. She stands again, shoulders squared but at ease. The recruits are ready now, not for combat, but for patience. She signals them forward with a single nod. One by one, they step into the water. The surface accepts them quietly, ripples overlapping, forming circles that expand and fade. Dalton watches, stopwatch still in her hand. But she doesn't start it. The world doesn't need measuring today. She breathes once more, the same slow rhythm she taught them. Around her, the sounds align, water moving, lungs filling, the soft hum of life returning to order. The morning wind stirs her hair against her collar, and for the first time in months, she allows herself to feel its touch. The camera draws back. The pool becomes a mirror of sky, the recruits' heads bobbing in even intervals, the rhythm of control now shared. In the reflection, Dalton's face appears calm, no longer haunted by command, only shaped by it. She looks down at the stopwatch one last time. The second hand glints in the light, then stops, perfectly still. Her breath matches the quiet around her. In and out. Simple. Certain. Final image. Sunlight on water. The synchronized sound of breathing. The silence of peace earned through discipline. What stays after the mission isn't the noise. It's the quiet. The kind that settles when adrenaline burns off and breath becomes the only sound left. Captain Rachel Keene learned that truth the hard way. Control isn't what you take. It's what you keep when everything else collapses. You can call it discipline, or maybe survival. But it's simpler than that. It's breath. It's choice. And it's the moment you stop fighting the fall and start owning it. Tell me what you'd have done when the light faded. I read them all. If this story reminded you that calm outlasts chaos, you know what to do. Subscribe, drop your thought below, and share this with someone who mistakes noise for strength. Because silence isn't surrender, it's command. The sand's still shifting out there. The echoes still carry. Mission logged. Control maintained. Fade the rotor wash. Story complete.